Welcome to this special interview on Banega Swasth India. It's Pride Month, and today we have with us someone really special, a filmmaker who started talking about AIDS and gay relationships way back. In fact, the film in mainstream cinema. He started with my brother Nikhil, and it's just been on and on. Thank you so much, Onir, for joining us today, for coming out, speaking out. Especially, when we're talking about, even in our campaign, Onir, we speak about leaving no one behind. So inclusion is really, really important. So the first thing what I would like to ask you is, I'm Onir and I'm gay is a very personal account. What made you pen it down at this point?
Actually, it was kind of accidental. I was talking to agent uh, Kanishka about the rights for a book called Carpet Weavers, which is the first Afghan gay novel, and I wanted to see if I could make it into a film nearly about 4 or 5 years back. And while talking, he started trying to convince me, and it's been, that I should work on a memoir. And I was like, you make it sound as if I'm ready to retire or something. And isn't it too early? And he kept on, pressing for the last 5 years nearly, I think. And during the COVID period, when I was at home, 2021, I thought that maybe, I discussed with my sister Irene, who is the co-writer with me,
Mhm.
that maybe it's not a bad idea because a lot of, when I grew up, there was no reference points, you
Hmm.
know, and there are not too many people in my industry and elsewhere who are comfortable even today talking about, saying even just I'm gay,
Yeah.
and uh, and talking about their journey. And I thought that, I get lots of messages from youngsters on
Hmm.
social media who are struggling to accept themselves, are struggling to deal with how their families or society uh, deal with their identity.
Identity. Yeah.
And I thought maybe this could help some people to navigate their lives and identity better. uh, so if it could even help a few people and touch a few lives, otherwise also, uh, I thought that why not, since it's anyway locked down and it's a
Yeah.
good time to introspect and write about one's journey.
I mean, absolutely, like what you said about acceptance, and especially one's identity. And when we talk about inclusion, I mean, these are very basic things on it. And of course, like you said, it'll help a lot of people. I think it'll give them that confidence at some point. You set the tone of the book and what's in store with a very important statement: equality is non negotiable. When it comes to gender, obviously, this has been a long standing struggle, since a while, like even you were saying right now. What do you think there are the significant successes and failures in the endeavor when we talk about equality for all?
I feel if I, as a queer person, talk, in 2018, when the Supreme Court verdict, the lawyer mentioned that the entire nation owes the LGBTQI community an apology.
Mm.
It really touched you, that finally someone feels the injustice that's been done to us for no reason. Why should any human being be treated less equally than anybody else, especially in the world's largest democracy? But in 2022, when I tried to make a film called We Are, where one of the characters is an army man, inspired by a real life major who came out in an interview with NDTV, and it's available in public domain. I was stopped from telling the story, and it really made me feel sad that that apology that Supreme Court talked about, that this whole acceptance, inclusion,
Mm.
needed to be implemented by every section of society and
Yes.
state. And why should it be that any institute, be it the army or anybody, judge us not
Mm.
because of not by our intellect, strength, talent, capabilities, loyalty, but by our sexuality? I mean, street people are not judged because of that. You know,
Yes.
you can hear about honey traps happening all the time, but
Mm.
does that stop street men from being recruited? No.
Yeah.
So it is. absolute discrimination and a disgrace that in 2022 we choose not to be a part of 57 progressive countries in the world which accept LGBTQI in the army, but we rather be, with the group that still oppresses and does not recognize us as equal human beings.
So, of course, stigma, like, and you said, even discrimination, which is still happening. In the book, you also talk about suffering, from low self esteem in your growing up years, from your looks to complexion and then your sexuality. There's also, moment when you talk about the realization at the age of 17. I realized for the first time that my love was not acceptable, something that was priceless to me, but was considered sinful by others. So, Onir, with children, is there any way you would have dealt with the situation differently? Or tell us, how can someone really cope in the same shoes, cope in a better way? Any suggestions? What would you tell them?
I feel that the world around right now is different from, you know, I myself, when I was in school in Bhutan, I didn't even know the word gay. So you can imagine someone understanding first that, okay, you are, I didn't think that I'm supposed to be bracketed into something different. I just thought I was another human being who had certain likes and dislikes, just like everybody has. And, and then to realize that not only are you bracketed as someone different, but also your identity is considered as sin by many. It is not accepted by many. So I grew up in that world, and today I feel very, very fortunate for so many youngsters that at least we are growing up in a world post 2018 where at least we're empowered by law not to be treated as criminals. Though we are still a long, long way off, be it in terms of our rights to marriage or adoption or various other legal rights. But still, what we have is precious,
Yes.
and it gives one more courage. But I always tell any youngster who messages me, who is afraid of being accepted by family or anybody, I said, first understand that this is not your only definition. You know,
Yeah.
focus on becoming independent. And at that point, if your family does not accept you because you have the courage and the possibility to walk out and redefine the notions of family, recreate your own family. Because if someone does not love your identity, that love is not worth hankering for or
Absolutely.
nurturing.
I mean, identity is what I think one lives for. And like you said, acceptance from family, of course, is the most important and equally important in society. Yes, but 2018 was the big game changer, and it has brought a lot, but a lot more needs to be done on ground. Only, of course, my brother Nikhil, we all remember it, in 2005, is a truly landmark film, as it was it was one of the first films to talk about AIDS and also the gay relationship and the stigma, the way you put it across. Today, especially on OTT platforms, we see many series dealing with the issue of gender and same sex relationships. How significant is this trend? And of course, you did it way back 17 years ago.
I feel that one, of course, more than narrative, always welcome, but I feel that a lot of narrative that is happening right now is happening from a very heteronormative gaze of about acceptance, about taking baby steps in understanding us. But my life, the life that I've lived, is not about taking baby steps, nor is it an issue. I have stories, I've lived, I've loved, and I don't see those stories being represented. And I don't see out and proud queer filmmakers making the stories about our narrative. Just like there was this talk about the necessity of having women tell their stories behind the camera. They're there because the feminine gauge is different. So is the queer gauge different, because we were born accepting the straight world. Nobody had to teach us. Pride month, I'll be getting like hundreds of calls that let's come for this panel discussion, come for this chat and talk about inclusion, diversity. And I'm like, nobody had to do that for me, for the straight world. And I feel that a lot of filmmakers themselves are learning about accepting us. And it's time that our stories are told the way we want to tell and not the way a heteronormative world accepts us. Because why should my identity depend on someone else's acceptance? Why should my stories be about what makes someone else comfortable? I feel that still, be it studios, be it platforms, do not recognize that I have stories and we have stories to tell, which is independent of acceptance in a heteronormative world, which is
So
still
the
trying to
narrative,
figure out.
you feel the narrative needs to change
Absolutely.
from the perspective. Yeah.
Yes.
Onir, also, whether it was my brother Nikhil, whether it was AIDS, which, back then, obviously it's stigmatized as a gay man's disease, to even monkeypox now, fighting the stigma continues to be a challenge for the community.
I feel that you cross a hurdle and then a few more comes up. And sometimes, I remember that in 2009 when the Delhi High Court had, decriminalized homosexuality, it was an incredible moment for the community. And in 2013, when the Supreme Court overruled it, you know, it was despair. And I thought that I would not see 2000, what happened in 2018 in my lifetime. And now that we have achieved that, you're also constantly thinking that look at the new hurdles that keep on coming because the patriarchal society is extremely insecure about what they feel as intruding into their power structure, be it in terms of women, be it in terms of the LGBTQI community. They're constantly threatened. And then you have this constant hurdles that one has to deal with because unfortunately decision makers even today in 2022 are largely men,
Yeah.
cisgendered men who come with a very heavy a backdrop, a baggage of patriarchy on them, which they don't even understand very often.
I think you've put that really well. I mean, what you just rightly said. We were talking about challenges. You said hurdles keep coming one after the other. Of course, we learn to deal with them. How big a setback has the pandemic been for the LGBTQ, for the community, when overall inequity of the society anyway seems to have increased? So,
I
what do you
think
feel these past 2 years? Has it pushed it back even further?
I think for a lot of people it was very, very traumatic because people who came out, who were living independently in cities away from home,
Hmm.
where they were not accepted very often, lost their jobs, had to go back to an environment which was not necessarily safe, which was abusive, which was humiliating for them. And if you look at what COVID did, the percentage of women who lost their jobs and the community is much more in compared to men. So obviously it affected the community much more. uh, but I think we are resilient. The community has, you know what happens is that your immunity against adversity is so strong because you are dealing with all your life that this too shall pass and we will move ahead.
Onir, when we talk about equality and inclusion and leaving no one behind, which is also the core of our campaign this, season 8, when it comes to access to opportunities, basics like whether it's health, education, exercising fundamental rights, what all aspects or areas, according to you, still need a lot of work, or what do you think needs to be prioritized? Let me put it that way.
I think most important is education, to be able to introduce gender and sexuality to children right from early age, where they do not mock anyone who they perceive as different, where they are also uh, confident enough to explore their own sexual identity or gender, you know because what you learn at that age shapes you up as a human being. So I feel education at school and also home is extremely important. and followed very closely by it is healthcare. That today, even today, you will have doctors where when parents find out about their children, they take their children, treating it as a disease. And very often there are doctors who are themselves homophobic and who would you know try and insist that this is wrong and you need to change, and it's a mental disease, or it's there's a problem. So I feel these are the core spaces, along with decision makers empowering the community in every aspect.
That's true. How do you think we can normalize this conversation around sexuality? What really needs to be done to bring about a difference?
I feel first of all people should not forget uh, conversations of diversity and inclusion after Pride Month, because every Pride Month, very often I get calls from different platforms or studios saying that, oh, we want to have a chat with you. And I tell them that I'm just giving you an example that, instead of this chat, why don't you also do some programming? You're making hundreds of, programs. One could, and they'll say, yeah, yeah, we're very keen, da da da. Why don't you send? And for the last, especially after 2018,
Yeah, okay.
the number of concepts, scripts that I've tried to send across, and they've always been received with silence or rejection, saying that, oh, right now we are taking baby steps and we cannot, this is too gay or whatever.
Too bold.
And yeah, and I feel that cinema is such a powerful medium.
Mm.
Why are you disempowering me to talk to my society, to the community, the allies, and the others who can be allies using this medium? So you are in a process disempowering the discourse. So I feel that all of us need to consciously enable discourse,
Mm.
and not discourse which is only from the point of view of appeasing what is, like very often people will tell that, you know as long as they're not on the face,
Yeah, it's not.
but what is this on the face? Or you'll hear the comments that, a lot of youngsters who are go young teenagers, people will tell them that, why do you have to move your hand this way or walk this way? And
Mm.
I'm like, have you ever heard someone tell that to a person perceived as straight, that why do you walk like this? Why do you talk like this? Why does your hand move the way it does?
Mm. So the
So I
judgment.
feel
Yeah.
that, you know, to stop being judgmental, to
Mm.
be able to listen
Mm.
is so important to bring in change.
I think that's a really, really strong message. What what you just said. I mean, being judging. I mean, even the comparison for that matter. Again, that it keeps coming down to the same thing: judgmental acceptance. You did tell us about you have ideas, and a lot of times people say it may be too bold, but the taboo and censorship is not something new. Only when it comes to issues pertaining to LGBTQ in the community. Any latest experience of not getting clearance for a film being a case in point of this? Like, do you feel because of the issue you've not got, has it ever happened? Any experience?
Like just I mentioned, the film that I was trying to make early this year, which is a sequel to my national award-winning film I Am, called We Are, that the Ministry of Defense
Yeah, the,
refused to give an NOC. So that's recent experience, and I wonder if today I had to do I Am, whether it would receive a national award or even a censor film certification board would give it a certificate, because we have forgotten that cinema is meant to question every form of power. And it's not about abusing, it's not about defaming, it's about questioning. And if that right to question is taken away from an artist, you, in a way, are throttling and killing the art.
true one, which is a very strong medium, like you rightly said. Only just a last question. What is the way forward? What are some of the critical issues of the community that need to be addressed? Whether it's the adoption rights, to marriage in that quest for non-negotiable equality?
I feel the list is huge, but I mean, like you mentioned, I feel that first of all, I mean, like it's in court marriage right, for example, and the way people oppose it stuns me. You know, this whole thing about against our culture, you know, and I'm like, what is culture? Isn't culture supposed to be something that evolves? Because humanity and human rights is more important than any culture, any book, anything that's stuck in time, because we need to understand that with time everything needs to evolve for a better world, not for a worse world, not for a society that continues to oppress, you know. And for that, I feel that be it inclusion of the community in the forces, inclusion of the community in the parliament, in the lawmaking bodies, inclusion in education, to talk about us. Why are we absent? I was absent in my history, geography, chemistry, biology, everywhere. That is unfair. We need to be present. Our presence needs to be recognized in every space of social or private communication.
Absolutely. Onir, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for giving us your time and wishing you
Thank you.
all the very best for the book.
Thank you so much.